Hello and welcome to the third installment of The Invisible Guitar on our new YouTube channel here. And today we're going to talk about step 3. Let's review the first two. Step 1 was establish the perimeter. We have to know every name on the notes of the neck cold. Okay? So we established how to do that. And then secondly, we set up the channels of communication, which is our ears. And we fine-tune them using intervals, which is learning how to hear distance, which I think is paramount to success in music. And especially my dream for you to be able to take the music that you hear in your head and just extemporaneously speak it like you do a language. You know, you would never ask a Japanese person what they're thinking when they speak in Japanese, because they're not thinking when they speak Japanese. So this is important, very important. And today we're going to attack. Now, attack is really basically what we get down to next. And I want to talk a lot about this because you're going to notice in my right hand today, I'm going to show you real slowly just some basic approaches to having sound technique on the guitar. You'll hear, a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, look, all he does is play with a bunch of technique or chops or whatever. I understand that. There are players that kind of do that. But however, it's very rare that you would hear somebody that has a high level of technique say, dogging on technique like that. And another way to think about it is, what if you hear something in your head, a really rapid passage that would be, just fast, and you couldn't execute it? Well, then you have a glass ceiling that was allowing a lid on your creativity and what you wanted to be able to do. So there's nothing wrong with technique. It's just something that has to be looked at. And we're going to kind of have a martial arts approach on it. So, first things first, even Clint Strong told me his dad used to have him sit in the corner and just do this with his right hand. You notice I'm not looking. I think that's really important, is to get a feel for the strings. And be able to know, oh, there's my B string, there's my high E, whichever one you're on. And another thing that's really important is to close the distance. Economy of motion. That's a term I'd like you to kind of get into your head. Economy of motion. Because here's the big thing, and this is important. Speed is the byproduct of slowness and accuracy. Let's say that again. Speed is the byproduct of slowness and accuracy. Okay? And the reason that works is because you'll be relaxed. And you look at the fastest animals in the world, I think the cheetah is probably one of them. Very relaxed creature. Sitting there chilling. But once it decides to go, zoom. Okay? So, there's two things I really want you to practice. Right hand, left hand, depending on which way you play. But first, just set your pick on the low E string. Bird on a wire. Just sitting here. Now, that's the way to prepare to play a note. All you got to do is go to a guitar store. I feel sorry for some of those guys that work at those places. And you'll hear people that have flawed technique, and it sounds like they're fighting with their guitar. They kind of swing at the notes, something like this. And that sounds bad, You could take a simple riff like a Leonard Skinner one or something, The guitar's not meant to be played like that. If I prep the notes, see, that way I'm using economy of motion, I'm relaxed, and I'm playing more by feel. So what we want to do first is we want to set your pick on the low E string. For those of you interested in alternate picking, I recommend a little bit thicker pick. This is one of my student, Ian Merkline's awesome picks. It's kind of like a Fender Extra Heavy, is really good. When I first started playing, and I remember I was 16 years old, I went to see Yngwie Malmsteen play at Cardi's in Houston. And he threw a pick out in the crowd, and I got one, and it was a Fender Extra Heavy. And I made note of that. And another thing I made note of at that show, this was a big lesson for me, when I heard his records, he was kind of a maverick. He was doing some things that no other guitar players were doing at the time, started a whole style. And when I saw him in concert, it didn't look like he was doing anything. At first I thought, is this guy plugged into some kind of lip syncing thing, or for guitar. I mean, it looked like so easy. And then that's when I learned, kind of like when you see Higan Machado or Carlos Machado touring around with somebody that doesn't know jiu-jitsu. It looks so easy, and then that's what we want for you. Okay, so that's something that we set up from the beginning. So another guy I saw early on was Al Di Meola. And same thing, he threw a pick out in the crowd, and I got one. It was really thick. I noticed that because you don't want a lot of give when you're trying to get that going at first. And there's a couple different ways you can approach things, too. You don't have to alternate pick. There's a style of picking called sweep picking I encourage you to look into, too. I saw Frank Umbali when I was a kid. He came to Texas Tom's and did a clinic, and I was pretty floored by his technique. You should check him out. It's great. And he had a different approach than I had seen. And I waited around to talk to him afterwards, and I said, man, I've got Al Di Meola's picking techniques book, and I've been working on it for a couple of years, but now I need to switch what you're doing. And he goes, oh, no, don't switch. He goes, I came up with some of what I came up with trying to play as fast as Al Di Meola, but there's another style of sweep picking we're going to address here, too, and I advocate looking at both, okay? You want to be aware of both. So basically, if you just set your pick on the string, and I'd like you to let it fall to the next string. See how that is? So relaxed. Just let the next string be your stopper. Here's the next one. It's kind of like a type of rest stroke for the right hand. You're resting on the next string. And you can do that with an upstroke too. I want you to get used to that. Okay? That's step one. Secondly, what we call alternate picking, but I want you to rest right underneath the string when you're done. So if I play a downstroke on the low E, watch what I'm going to do here. Look at that. And then I'm there. Economy of motion. So when you go to playing each string, and when you look at the high-level players, like I mentioned earlier, you'll notice that it's really basically more of a thumb and index finger moving. Not the whole wrist. Definitely not the whole arm. There are some players who play with their whole arm, and that's a lot of work. It's not economy of motion. It may work for them, but I don't want to have to keep up that level of practice all the time. I'd rather have something that's kind of like a Ferrari, a fine precision engine over here. Okay? So as simple as that sounds, look, Clint's got a lot of technique, and that's all he ever did. People ask him all the time about his right-hand technique. What did you practice? That's what he practiced. And to do that without looking. Look at a great basketball player. We got the Final Four going on right now. Does the basketball player look at the ball when he dribbles? No. Somebody will come steal it. This looking at the guitar business is going to touch what we talked about last time with blind musicians excelling, okay? You can be hyper aware of this. Now, if you want to talk about the sweep picking, if you were to do it across strings, you'd want to arrange the scale 3 notes per string to be able to pull this off. So if you played down, up, that third downstroke would cross over to the next string. I don't use that all the time, but it's something I like. It's a different kind of attack. Gives you more ways to articulate. Or you could alternate pick it. Sweep picked. I also practice legato. Pick the first note, hammer on the next 3. Now, I don't like doing scales and positions like that too much. We're going to talk about that next time. We're going to really look at the major scale. But today's a little bit more about attack and the right hand and left hand, depending on which way you pick. Okay? Now, the sweep picking thing, you could take a simple idea, like a major arpeggio. Here's one we could do D. 5th fret of the A string. I'm sitting on here with a downstroke. And I'm going to go to the 4th fret of the D string, and I'm going to just let it fall to the next string. It'd be D, F sharp, A, D, F sharp. Should know those notes by now. 5th fret, 4th fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. And then when you go backwards, you're going to go upstrokes. See? Basically this kind of motion. And however, you can get that up to a crazy technique. Sweeping is really a wonderful thing. You know, you can play those notes and it has more of like a glissando, almost like a violin effect. I cannot emphasize this enough. I think that's one of the sticking points a lot of players have is they work too hard at it. Okay? So think of it as kind of 3 things. 1, bird on a wire. You're sitting there. You're prepared. There's no way you can make a mistake now. You don't want to attack from a distance because then that's erratic. You know, one of the things we know in martial arts is like if I put my hand here and I push somebody from a distance, that's not very effective. But if I put my hand on them and then I push them, you know, that person's going to go back. That's called a clinch in the martial arts. Close the distance. You can do the same thing with your right hand. Close the distance. And then when you play the sweep approach, you're just going to go to the next string and fall. But I want you to touch the next string without looking. When you do the alternate picking approach, you'll play a note and just rest right underneath the string immediately. So you're ready. This is a little thing, but it's a big thing. Okay? That's the whole idea. Here's a little tale to think about it. I always say this, and I'll say it again. Who thinks about money more than anybody? And most of the time people say, oh, rich people. That's not true. It's far from the truth. You know who thinks about money all the time? People who don't have it. I love the example of Tony Hawk. You know, I like him a lot. He's an amazing person and a great skateboarder and a great man. And I read somewhere where, where he was telling one of his school counselors he was going to be a skateboarder. They're like, well, you better find something to fall back on. But you see, he did what he loved and the money did follow. And he's made a lot of waves with that kind of stuff. Here's another way of thinking of it. On this shoulder here, you've got the goddess of slowness and accuracy. On this shoulder here, you've got the goddess of speed. If you pay more attention to the goddess of slowness and accuracy, then the goddess of speed will become jealous and pay more attention to you. If you like a girl, hit on her girlfriend, right? It's one of the little funny things about nature is people want what they can't have or whatever, So by focusing on slowness and accuracy, and thank God for my dad who taught me to fish. I had to learn patience when I was a kid because I wanted to be a good fisherman like my dad. And you just show up when you fish. You have to be patient. You have to wait. And it drives a lot of people crazy. They can't do it, but I can. I have an incredible amount of patience because of my father and the way he taught me things. And that was really important. And I also learned a lesson, when I was a kid, I got a science project where I got an egg from my grandma's farm and I was going to incubate it, right? And I kept a log every day and I was so excited about this. And then finally I came home one day and the little chick was trying to get out of the egg. And me being an impatient kid, I tried to help it. I messed with nature. I went against the laws of nature and it killed the little chick and I was devastated. And, I was devastated. So I think that was the universe teaching me, hey, dude, you better get this patience thing because you're meant to be a good guitar player and we're going to have to assimilate that into your style. Okay? So there's the 3. Now we're going to move on into next week. We're going to start getting around on the guitar. But lesson 3, attack. I know this seems like simple stuff, but I would say 80% of the guitar community is erratic in that. I've seen it. Technique is not the norm. High-level technique is not the norm. It's an exception to the rule, and the guys who really have it have taken the time to set it up correctly. Okay? Email me with any questions, and I'll see you for class 4.